Welcome to the Life of Hair. My name's James Atkinson. Thank you for joining me in this week's episode. Now, this week's episode is all about a balayage technique, a ribbon weave technique with backcombing to create beautiful diffusion and softness to refresh my client's balayage. And I'm also going to talk to you about the tone caramel. Now, the caramel shade ranges quite a lot in terms of how warm and how cool people perceive caramel to be. So we're going to talk a little bit about that as well in this particular episode, because I think it seems like everybody's really into the discussion behind the toning phase, and I think obviously what's valuable to you is valuable to me, and so I'm definitely going to try and make a bigger effort to talk about tones and colors. And you know, as I've always said, you know, we're not making this brand specific. It will apply to any color range that you use when you are coloring hair yourself. Color rules are color rules. The manufacturer does not own color. Color is a natural phenomenon, and manufacturers try to make us think and believe that they've got something unique up their sleeve, but unfortunately they haven't. They've got a series of 3 primary colors that they mix together to create a whole spectrum of colors. So we need to bear that in mind, guys, when we're talking about what colors we are using in these videos. It's not brand specific. So I hope you enjoy this week's episode, and if you do, then please do me the massive favor of hitting that thumbs up button, subscribing if you haven't already, and chatting to me down in those comments. I love to hear from you guys, and I do my absolute best to get back to everybody with your questions, queries and thoughts. And a quick shout out to all of my Patreons. Thank you to you guys for the massive support, and I hope you're enjoying the content that I deliver over on Patreon. And if you'd like to know any more about my Patreon, then do head down to the description and you will be able to see just there exactly what you can get involved with. If you have any questions though, do not hesitate to ask me down in the comment section. Until next time, guys, look after yourself. Peace out, and I will see you in the next one. Here we have the starting point for this colour. My client hasn't had her hair coloured for months and months and months due to the current situation, coronavirus, as many of our clients haven't made it to the hair salon. Now, she's got naturally very curly hair. She blow dries it straight all of the time. So she wanted a technique that, you know, if she did wear it curly, it's very occasionally, that it would look good both ways. So that's why I went with this technique. Simple pre-section, highest point in the head, subdivided to the back of the ear on a slight diagonal backward section. That's just so that the head doesn't become too kind of separated front to back. I don't do that on every single occasion, but I do it on as many as I feel like it's gonna work for this, especially where she's wearing her hair super straight. Now we're going to start this technique a little bit further into the technique than I would do on some techniques, and that's basically just to show you around the highest part of the head. So we split the hair into 4, and then I've worked my way up towards the natural parting, and as I've come to the parting, my sections have pivoted horizontal to the parting. And that is really important in this particular instance because of how straight she wears her hair. I want those sections to fall straight down in the natural fall just behind the parting area. And in terms of technique, it's super simple. We're using about 1.5 centimeters in between each of the sections, and splitting that section and digging down into it, creating a skip slice effectively, a fairly deep skip slice of about 3 to 5 millimeters, back combing from the ends all the way up to the root area. Remember, guys, the less we kind of tease, the less tangled it will become. So make sure your brush strokes are long and smooth and working consistently up the hair. We're not creating padding for a wedding hair. We are just removing some of the hairs from further down the hair shaft closer to the head, so we create a nice diffusion. So it's a super simple technique that repeats itself time and time again throughout the technique. There are a few things to remember, you know, about the brush stroke. And do remember, guys, about your saturation. I don't talk about saturation as much as I think I should, but saturation is, in simple terms, where we apply bleach to our client's hair, and the level of saturation, the amount of products we put on, is one of the key factors to how well our client's hair lifts. Now, in this particular instance, this is afro hair, or, you know, textured hair, as some people would like to be called. And you know, I still refer to it as afro hair because I did mention that in a video once, and some people were very confused by what I meant by textured. They thought I meant texturized, and textured is a term that you know, encompasses all curly hair types, including my own. So, you know, it's to differentiate, it's to say, look, just because it's afro hair doesn't mean that it's not just curly hair, and we should treat it with the respect that, you know, all curly hair gets. And the thing to think about as well with kind of, there is one big difference though. It tends to be more porous, and so that means it lifts quicker. And the other thing about having afro textured hair is that it is weaker. There is less protein present in the hair, and therefore it's easier to damage when you're lifting it. So bear in mind, it will always lift a bit faster than you expected it to. If you were working on, say, Middle Eastern hair of the same level, would take a lot longer because it would be a lot coarser and it's a lot stronger. So please bear that in mind. You know, we should all be able to color all hair types, but there are a few things that you do need to think about when we're coloring these hair types. So I hope that gives you a better understanding. Saturation is so important no matter what level, what type of hair. Get enough product on the hair to ensure that you get a beautiful, even lift result. No orange splodges kind of on the underneath of the section. Work side to side across the sections to make sure that that product is well saturated through the sections. It is massively important. I can't emphasize it enough in this video. And, you know, thinking about the texture of someone's hair before we color it. If it's fine, it's going to lift fast. If it's very blonde, it's going to lift fast. And, you know, we don't need to leave it on for the full development time. Sometimes in these particular instances, we can leave it on a much shorter amount of time and still get the level of lift that we desire. So there are some things to think about when we are assessing our client's hair prior to colouring it, because sometimes it means we can drop the volume, which means that we can create less damage. We can leave it on less time, which means we can create less damage. There are ways and tricks within utilization of, you know, the products that we use to ensure that we get a better end result with less damage, you know, all the good stuff. So bear that in mind as you work on different hair textures. So we're going to be working our way up towards this top crown area now. We're going to do exactly the same thing. We're working our way up towards the top crown area now, and we're doing exactly the same thing with all of our sections. A deep 3mm weave, tease towards the roots, apply our product, brush up towards the top of the head when we apply our product, just to diffuse any hard lines that we might create. That's really important when we're doing techniques like this. And saturate. Now, one of the things when we talk about the tone that we're trying to achieve today, which is a nice cool caramel. She wanted caramel, but she didn't want it on the orange side of caramel. Now, caramel is one of those particular colours that creates a lot of confusion. Lots of people don't specifically understand it. You know, there's the very warm caramels that kind of lean towards the orange side, and there's the very cool caramels which are kind of ashy in appearance. Now, caramel is a mixture of kind of coppers and violets basically, and dependent on how you utilize your copper to violet ratio will dependent on how much you see of the warmth in each of those colors. Because remember, to neutralize copper, orange, requires blue. But if you use violet, you won't neutralize all of the orange, but you'll get this beautiful controlled warmth. And that is what caramel is. It's a controlled warmth. One of my favorite tones. Now, obviously we can go a lot of violet and really reduce the power of the orange in there and create a more ashy caramel shade, which this is what we're going to try and do with today's video, which hang around to the end to see if we manage that. And you know, when we're talking about creating warm cool colors, it can be a little bit confusing for people sometimes, I think, because in people's minds it's either warm or it's cool, and to have both is where the confusion lies in terms of caramel. When we're talking about ratios, it's difficult for me to say what your brand that you use, what the ideal ratio is. Now, lots of brands have got a caramel shade in already now, and you know, it's about experimenting with how that works for you. And one of the main reasons that I in the past I've kind of gone round talking about tones and toners and stuff like that is because it's so dependent on your lift. Now, for instance, I'm not going to lift my client's hair to a level 10 to drop her down to a level 9. So it's really important that we identify that, you know, in between 9 and 10 is a whole spectrum of lift before you actually get to 10, and the same between 7 and 6. It's not just, oh, it's a 6, oh, it's a 7. It can be in between, and we do need to factor that into our color choices when we're picking toners. We cannot tone a level 9 with a level 10. There's not enough tone. It will deposit some tone, but it will leave behind more warmth than we were probably expecting. We need to be able to identify, are we yellow? Are we pale yellow? Are we yellow orange? That is what will be the difference between a great colorist and somebody who is still mastering their craft. Now, as we work up the head here, back to the technique. So I've diversified into color there, but I just really want to talk about that. As we're working up the sides here, we've worked up the sides to the parietal ridge, and now you will find us in the front hairline. So we're going to do exactly the same thing, but the sections are going to go diagonally across the parting for this particular color. And that is a really great way of adding extra softness to your techniques. So every time we do a diagonal, it's very hard for the eye to follow the direction of a diagonal, especially when it's in a straight line, because our eye doesn't necessarily want to be drawn that way. So that is a great way of amplifying softness without adding any extra technique to your work. Just a simple change of angle creates a massive difference. So it's well worth thinking about how you position your sections as you travel through these techniques to create maximum softness for minimum effort. Because remember, guys, busting your backsides at work for the sake of it, just because somebody said this is the way that I recommend you do it. It takes twice as long, but it's the way I recommend you do it. Guys, really try and understand what you are doing with your techniques and how you can utilize other things like foil angle, like backcombing, like all these type of things that really reduce your workload. Because at the end of the day, you know, if you're going to be a hairdresser for a long time, you don't want to have this really long arduous career that, you know, eventually you'll leave the industry, because it, you know, it's not the easiest industry to be in a lot of ways. Those of you that have been a hairdresser a long time will probably appreciate that you'll have, you know, times in your career where you've thought about doing something else, and some of you will have left altogether because of those times. So, you know, make your life as straightforward as possible and try and achieve the best results without stressing yourself half to death. I work with so many hairdressers who run around frantically panicking about timings, about color results, about this, about that. Try and get your skills into a place where none of that becomes an issue. You can just focus on your client and doing the best possible job that you can do as a brilliant hairstylist. So we're on to the right hand side now, and we are working exactly the same way. We've just gone onto a slight diagonal, and again that's to accentuate any softness, that because in this front area we want it to be beautifully seamless and blend. We want it to be like that way all the way through, don't get me wrong, but we really want to focus now, make sure that we are giving this 100%. Now, someone asked me a great question in the comments: how do you concentrate? How do you get your clients to stop talking and so that you can concentrate and do a better job? And I think it's a really simple thing. You just say to your client, I would really love to concentrate on your hair. So would it be okay if we didn't talk for a little bit, just so that I can really get your hair right? Because they did come for a chat, yes, but what they primarily came for is a great hair color. So if you can strike the balance in those areas where you're really going to concentrate and make the absolute most of that area on the head, because we can't concentrate for the entire time. Human nature dictates that we can't concentrate for the entire service. So we have to be able to hone in on the areas that we really need to concentrate. And so it's okay to say to your client, sorry, do you mind if I just switch off for a minute from talking and really focus on this area on your hair? It's really important I get this bit absolutely bang on. No way are they ever going to say to you, no, I want you to keep talking and concentrate. It's just not going to happen. So the best way to do it is just be honest with them and say, look, I need to concentrate. Do you mind if we just have a minute where we're not talking for a second? Honest to God, it will work perfectly. It does work for me all the time. Money pieces especially, I'm always saying to my client, do you mind if I just concentrate here? I'll be back with you in a minute. And they're absolutely fine by it. So we're nearly done with the application of this technique. It is a really simple technique, as you can see. I like to keep all my techniques nice and simple, easy to do, and keep it within that kind of hour, just over an hour time frame. I don't want to be doing a 90-minute foiling job if I can avoid it. If I can't avoid it, well, I can't avoid it. But if I can avoid it, I absolutely will. So this is going to be one of those techniques where once you get it down, that's just a little added bonus in this, technique side of this tutorial. And be careful when we're applying our product that we saturate. Honestly, I can't say that enough. When I'm teaching my classes, I always see the students under-saturating, and as soon as they start saturating the hair more, the pieces that they've painted are so much lighter, so much quicker. Have the lift, you can see a very, very yellow lift. It is one of those things, like I said, I wanted to get it somewhere between an 8 and a 9 and tone it on a level 8. So we've toned with Redkin, the HD resolution range, and this is 8.8 in the HD, which is the mocha shade. But remember, it's made of cool and warm tones, so even gold coppers mixed with violet shades to create beautiful coppers work out really nicely. I just happen to have a really beautiful shade within the HD res range, but if you don't have a beautiful shade, as I discussed earlier, you can make it from a nice combination of coppers and violets, mix them together, experiment, get a mannequin head, get a cutting of your client's hair, and experiment with those shades to create your own custom mixes. Sometimes when I'm just using Shades EQ, I have my own custom mix. So what I'll do is I'll write that all down in the description for anyone that wants to see it. If anybody has enjoyed this episode, and if you have, then please leave me a comment down below. Have a wonderful week, and I shall see you again for another episode of Life of Hair next week.